bees. I got stung in the top of my head by a bee the other day, and I've been pretty freaked out since then. Like, I don't dislike them, but I don't want them to sting me. Why do you think they keep coming out? You know what it is?
It's that oil you put on.
I smell like essential oils because of my allergies.
They're just trying to pollinate you.
I guess it's disappointing when they land and find out I am not, in fact, a beautiful flower.
So then they sting you.
It stung me on the top of my head. All right, you ready to plant some strawberries? Gardener Maya?
Strawberries. Yeah.
What in the world? Hey, look, sunflowers. So I'll prune one of these once I let them get a little bit bigger. And here are noodle beans. And this is chamomile, like getting a lot bigger. And those are dahlias coming up from last year. Those beautiful purple dahlias that were 2 shades of purple. Oh, look. Hey, little frog friend. Oh, I missed it. Oh, I love little frogs and toads in the garden. Hey, I won't hurt you. So this is actually an artichoke that my friend Amanda brought in her suitcase from California, and it died back. I'm gonna move it into one of these beds because I think it'll do better. I put it in this so I could move it in and out last year, but I'm gonna put him in a bed. I know I showed this in my garden tour the other day, but can you believe how huge these kale leaves are? They're just massive because we top dress this with compost. Definitely feeding your plants makes a big difference in how well they do. I was planting tomatoes. I have 4 spaces to fill here that I didn't finish earlier. It started to rain, so I went in. But I got all of these little guys in. They look so small after they've been planted really deep. So right here I have my first Greenstalk planter that I got a couple years ago. It's empty because I just dumped the soil out into one of the beds this year because it was pretty spent and I wanted to just refresh it with new soil. I could have just amended the soil that was in here. You can do that. If you have containers, you're gonna want to amend that soil every season, pretty much, like at the end of the season of growing something in there, by adding in some sort of organic matter, whether that's some measure of compost or manure or whatever, and just kind of mixing it into the top of your soil. And we were already adding more soil to these beds and then adding compost on top of it because these beds were always kind of low. We didn't fill them up as high as we should have in the beginning, and so it just was pretty much the same to dump it in here and amend that and then put fresh soil in here. We get asked about the Greenstalk planters a lot because I have this one and then I have the 2 green ones that are probably a little more noticeable right in front of my greenhouse. I get a lot of questions about these, and today I kind of wanted to just answer those questions since we were gonna go ahead and plant these anyway. We're putting the strawberries in these and we've already got the soil ready in the green ones, and I'm gonna go put some snap beans in those. So, like, for the legality's sake, this is not paid content. However, we are affiliates of Greenstalk, so there will be a coupon code and a link down below. Greenstalks come in 3, 4, and 5 tiers. The 3 that I have are all 5 tiers, but it's a family-owned company and they're made in the United States. They're actually based out of Knoxville, where I used to live. And essentially how it works is you fill these containers up with soil. They have holes in the bottom of them, so it's designed where you can pour your water in the top, and it works its way down through the different levels. You assemble it with these in between each layer, and it waters each individual pocket of these containers, which is really, really cool. So you get the whole tower garden, which is really striking. You can grow food in a small space, but also it's really easy to water because you just pour your water in the top and you don't have to water each individual plant. So you can see here I've got this on the little turner, which we've built up some pavers here so it can sit on the uneven ground. And I filled this up with soil and I actually kind of press it off to the side. And I put this little tray in and I line up each one of these holes with a pocket. So when the water makes its way down into this, it evenly distributes into each pocket.
I like to fill the last layer on the ground and then lift it all in place rather than trying to lift the bag up and dump it. It's a little high.
Raindrops are falling on my head.
Literally.
And then this little guy goes on top, which has those holes in each corner, and it has a measurement that you fill to this level. Like you fill it to the 5 if you have 5 tiers, and it waters all of it. So ready to put your strawberries in? Bare root strawberries. We got our bare root strawberries from Stark Brothers, and like people keep asking us where we're getting like what we're planting, and we ordered this a while ago. Like I think we placed our order for all of the perennial stuff that we're putting in and all of these kinds of things, our berry bushes and everything, I don't know, like 3.5 months ago, maybe even more than that. So I'm not sure what the stock of everything is for all these things, but I will tell you where we got them just so you can look if you're looking for them. So these are just going in here, tucking the roots down in. The soil's nice and soft because it's new. And the idea with this is that they'll grow and kind of hang over the edge. When I was asking for your feedback about what we should plant in our green stalks, lots of suggestions for strawberries. Of course, a lot of people said trailing flowers. I've already planted out all the nasturtiums I started in the garden, so I couldn't do those. And then the green beans was one that people said a lot, and I thought that was a really good idea. But Dolores, one of our commenters, said she put her strawberries in her tall green stalk. She said to point them towards the outside so they would hang over the edge, and she said that she picked 20 pints of strawberries. That's pretty good. I don't know what variety they were, and I'm sure that factors in, but I know that the strawberries in our kiddie pool are loaded right now, and so I feel like that's a totally reasonable expectation, and that's what sold us when we got that comment. We were like, this is definitely what we want to plant in one of these. Jeremiah debated building a cool little planter area for them, but this also took something else off the to-do list, which is nice right now. The to-do list is long. This variety is Ozark Beauty Strawberry Everbearer is what the tag says. Oh, where's the little topper thing? Oh, there it is. And now that wonderful, accomplished, slightly anticlimactic moment where you go through all the effort to plant something and then you stand back and you feel super accomplished, but it looks absolutely like much of nothing, and you know, now you have to wait for a while in order to get to really enjoy it. I feel the same way every time I plant my tomatoes. I'm like, I work, and you know, like after planting all of these rows, I mean, like my back is hurting and I'm like, my wrist is hurting from like all the digging out, and then I stand up and I look at it and I'm like, man, this looks really puny and like hardly anything. It's the gardener's vision of 3 months from now that you feel the satisfaction of knowing that that's coming, because it sure doesn't look like much now. Since Maya already hauled the soil down here, we're gonna go ahead and plant these pots that we have. These are Maya's Darth Vader pot. And because I know you guys will ask, one of our very sweet viewers from Australia sent us that pot. I have no idea where you can get one. I've not found them anywhere. Got some other little just flowers to put in these pots. I got this little guy to go right here in the middle. Just gonna put a little bit of peppermint in this pot. Mint's so nice to have around, but it's also a bully. I always tell people you should contain your mint, or else you will rue the day you put it in your garden. I have a bed back in the corner, and it's had mint in it for like, I guess like 4 years now, 5 years now. I don't know. I've pretty much just relinquished that corner of the garden to mint, but it's not like a true peppermint. It's not super sweet, and I got this just to have some real true peppermint that's on the sweeter side. I read something once about how mint will like pollinate, like cross-pollinate, and it kind of loses its flavor over years as it reseeds. I don't really know much about that, but maybe that's why that mint back in the corner is quite as tasty. However, it is persistent, and now if you weed eat that whole edge of the garden, it's very like opens up your lungs because there's mint all on the walkways. It's very aromatic. Yep. We'll have this for a little while. I need to go grab 4 more tomato plants because I got these holes ready and I didn't put anything in them yet. These are all cherry tomatoes down this row of different varieties. I like to have the cherry tomatoes right here next to the pavilion because one, it's very convenient for snacking, so you can just kind of grab some and sit down and eat them. Another thing is, whenever like I'm sitting out here and my kids want to be where I am, they'll pick the cherry tomatoes because it's where I am and it gives them something to do with their hands. And as long as I'm sitting here with them, my kids will pick this entire wall of cherry tomatoes. Now, if I were to tell them, hey, go pick the cherry tomatoes, they would probably get like a third of the way through it before they had some reason why it was too hard or whatever. But if I'm sitting down here, even if I'm working on something else, they'll pick them. So, strategic garden placement based on getting your children to work in your garden. I've got all of my plants out here. I was actually noticing today, my tomatoes look really rough this year. Normally they're really beautiful and their little arms are really outstretched. A healthy tomato plant has big, long stems that are basically saying to the sun, you know, give me all you got. Whenever they're like this, or especially if they're like this, their little branches are just pointing straight up. Usually that's a sign of stress, and that's kind of what's going on with mine. Really, at this point, they're mostly all too big for the pots that they're in because I planted all of these to sell at the shindig, so they weren't supposed to still be in pots by now. It'll be okay. They'll bounce back once they get in the ground, but kind of makes me sad looking at them. I'm like, man, you guys are looking rough. They're just big, miscolored. They need some fertilizer, and I really just want to get them in the ground. Okay, confession time. This year, the whole like COVID-19 seed shortage, can't get stuff shipped thing really took me off guard. And there were some things that I had planned to put in my garden, like some of my varieties of tomatoes that I like to get from Wild Boar Farms, and like some different things like that, that I just sort of procrastinated getting and doing. And then by the time I realized that I didn't have them and I needed them, it was like, oh, and now, you know, the world shut down. So I just decided to adjust and not have those things. But these puny little tomato starts, I'm pretty sure these are Berry's Crazy Cherries, which are one of my very favorite cherry tomatoes, because I started some of those like in a separate little pot, apparently didn't mark it. I think that's what these are, so I'm gonna go plant them. I really feel like maybe a little bit of what's happening this year is, hi, welcome to Roots and Refuge Farm, where I'm gonna tell you to do as I say and not as I do, because I am flying by the seat of my pants. This year in gardening is so different than any other year, and I don't know, I always do harebrained stuff like this, so I can't even blame this on coronavirus. Another prime example of how not to take care of your plants, here is a little sad Sweet 100 that I bought at the store and stuck in here and didn't have a tray underneath it, therefore it didn't have enough water. Looking pretty puny, but maybe you'll just learn this year by watching me that sometimes you think things are too far gone and they're not. They'll bounce back, they'll be okay. See, I'm trying to rein it in to a place where I can have some wisdom and still be a good gardener. In all seriousness, you do not have to be a perfect gardener to have a great garden. I consider myself a pretty okay gardener. My garden's really good in all its imperfections and mistakes that are made. I still get a lot of food, a lot of enjoyment. It's a beautiful place to be. But I am very thoroughly a pretty okay gardener. I think if you love anything enough, it makes up for your imperfections. Like if you forget stuff and make mistakes, like I'm very passionate about the garden. I'm also pretty forgetful, stretched kind of thin. All in all, I would say that the love makes up for the mistakes. There's a rain coming in. You can probably hear the wind picking up. I have a thorough video explaining how I plant tomatoes, so I will link that down below if you guys want to watch to know my methods of doing things. Okay, I had to close this hole in a little bit because it's gonna be way too big for these little squirts. I almost feel silly planting them like this, but they'll grow up. It's probably a little on the deep side. There we go. Hopefully it's okay that that's that deep, that tiny. I've done that before, but we'll see. Worst case scenario, I'll never know if these actually were Berry's Crazy Cherries. Again, I survey my tiny squirt plants and my standing tradition. I take a picture, which I will look back on when I still feel like they're tiny squirts in 2 weeks, and I'll realize that they've grown quite a lot. The drawback of checking on your garden obsessively 5 times a day is that you don't really realize how much it grows because you see it so often. So I like to take a lot of photos. I've got videos as well, but I still like to look at the pictures of my garden just on my cell phone, and then I take a lot of pictures of my big camera too, because I enjoy them. And truly, you put so much into the garden, and its peak is such a short period of time compared to the entire year. So I think that taking a lot of photos is very much fuel for the flame, like in the winter and in the off season and in the planting season. If you have a hard time remembering details about the garden, taking a lot of photos really helps with that. She's definitely lovely. Real quick before it starts to rain, which I might not have the time to finish, but I've got out here these, which are Tanya's pink potted pole beans that I saved from my own beans last year. This is a bean that's not really widely available. They were sent to me by a viewer because I couldn't find any, and so I'm not sure where you can buy them. But I saved these, and this is what I'm gonna plant in one of these green stalks. I might not even have enough to plant the entire thing, but I'm gonna try. This soil has been in this one for a couple of weeks, so it's a little more crumbly than that other soil was. But I'm just gonna poke a hole here in each one of these pockets and place one of these bean seeds in each one of these. I've been asked before if we've ever had any issues with these in wind, and it gets fairly windy up here. We live on a ridge, and we get pretty high winds, but not like prairie winds. I've never had one of these turn over, either the ones that are right up against here or the one that's out in the middle of the garden, which I would think if one was gonna turn over, it would probably be that one because this has a windbreak with the greenhouse, but I've just never had that problem. And they're pretty easy to move around. You see me doing that right now. They're good and centered and level, so I've not had that issue. I think this is gonna be really pretty with the beans, but I also think it's gonna make it really simple to harvest them because they'll be a little more visible and upright, and I like that idea. So I thought that that would be a really cool thing to get to do with one of these. For those of you who might not have ever sown beans before, all I do is just put the bean on the surface of the soil and then just press it in. I don't try to like poke holes first or anything like that. And you want to plant all your seeds twice as deep as they are wide. So for these bean seeds, that's probably 3/4 of an inch. It only took a few minutes, and I had more seeds than I thought. I think with these this year, we may eat some of them, but I'm really gonna focus on saving seeds from this year because I really do like these beans, and the seeds are hard to get. So I'm growing this entire green stalk with them, and then I'll put the rest of these out here in a row in the garden so that I'll be able to save more seeds and probably have enough to share next year. And in the other green stalk, I'm gonna do this royal burgundy bush bean. All right, I just planted this really quick without making a video because it is starting to rain. So these are planted with the burgundy bush beans, and over there the Tanya's pink potted beans. So I'll have purple beans and pink beans. The other thing that I was thinking when I chose green beans for these is the fact that they do grow really quickly. So these will be really full and green here in like, you know, maybe 5 weeks. They'll be really starting to bush out and they'll get even bigger. Plus I do think that it'll be nice to be able to grow food in them. And also I think that it would be really nice to have those pretty beans growing right here by the greenhouse. It'll just be a pretty thing here in the middle of the cottage garden. I have a green stalk from my mom that I've had for a little while now, but with all of this crazy sheltered play stuff, I haven't gone to her house to set it up. But I'll probably go set it up like maybe next week for Mother's Day so that she'll have that to plant it. She knows about it, so I'm not ruining any secrets telling it on here. I asked her what color she wanted, so it's not a surprise, but I know she'll be glad to have it. It'll be good for her to be able to grow some stuff in her backyard. She has lots of plants, but she can grow some food plants in this. All right, good night, garden. Thank you guys for hanging out with us today. I bless you. Until next time.